What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. Today's video, we're going to be talking about X-Men number 25 by Gerry Duggan and Stefano Caselli. This issue is the aftermath of everything that happened with the Hellfire Gala. Pretty much everything you see in this issue is post Mutant Massacre at the Hellfire Gala. And for those who are wondering if for whatever reason you've missed what's been going on, this is your first time hearing about any of this, and this is all a shock to the system. A mutant massacre happened at the recent Hellfire Gala last week, and as a matter of fact, it was kind of a double meaning of mutant massacre. Typically when there's a mutant massacre, it means that mutants were largely destroyed, but in this case it's actually not just mutants that were destroyed, maybe not so much destroyed, but presumed destroyed and killed. But in another instance, a lot of those mutants were also displaced and sent to other areas, and we actually learn a good bit about that in this issue. But the real reason this is called the Mutant Massacre is largely because the way that the massacre was framed at the Hellfire Gala is that mutants killed a lot of humans. This is why when we look at this issue and we see the headlines talking about a mutant massacre, they're not talking about a bunch of dead mutants. They're talking about a bunch of dead humans. Humans of all different shapes, sizes, and varieties and levels of importance and unimportance. And Orchis has set themselves up as the good guy in this, that they were the ones who came in, swooped in, and saved humanity from the big bad scary mutants. The way Gerry Duggan is framing Orchis right now hits for a lot of different reasons. For the largest part of Orchis's tenure in the Marvel Comics universe, just going back a few years to 2019 and 2020, Orchis was largely seen as the new upcoming big bad threat, but they were just kind of all over the place. They didn't really seem to have a strict agenda, but the reason for that was because Orchis was laying their plans out. They weren't just trying to attack the X-Men all at once. They were trying to sow seeds of discord as well as set up dominoes to be knocked down over time. And that is why when we get to the Hellfire Gala just this past week, why it just kind of seemed like, oh my God, Orchis just came out of nowhere, where in reality, they had been there the whole time and were plotting and putting all these things, these plans into motion, and it was just a matter of time before they finally struck. And the thing that kind of made all of this possible was not just Orchis working together as a single tight-knit unit, but you can really accredit a lot of Orchis's success as of late is when Moira McTaggart had joined them after the events of Jonathan Hickman's Inferno and Benjamin Percy's 10 Lives and 10 Deaths of Wolverine. Orchis is now the new face of mutant oppression, and I find a lot of what Duggan is doing here really interesting because he's taking a lot of real life things, using them as commentary, the very problematic ideas of the real world. There's a point where Dr. Stasis, when he's addressing the public, he literally uses a play on the phrase, see something, say something. For those that aren't familiar, it's a phrase that was used largely by the Department of Homeland Security and was basically a way to kind of tell people, hey, if you see something that could potentially be an act of terrorism or something that could lead to an act of terrorism, say something. This whole thing got to start back over 20 years ago. This was in 2001, right after 9/11. This was the United States government's way of galvanizing the American people into honestly kind of spying on each other. Now, granted, you could probably make the argument it was for mostly good reason. We didn't want to have another 9/11, but it did start to make people turn on each other, if only just a little bit. Well, now Gerry Duggan is taking that very same real life thing and he is pointing it at mutants. What Dr. Stasis is using the see something, say something phrasing for is for if humans see something that looks like a mutant, it could inevitably lead to that mutant's death. And the reason why I'm bringing all this other stuff up, and you're probably wondering, oh my God, why is Blerd getting political all of a sudden? I say this because, well, for one, life and living, there's nothing political about it, but everything that's going on here, if I were just to ignore the commentary, then I would honestly be doing everyone here a grave disservice. We can't forget there are a couple of things that have happened very recently in the Marvel Comics universe, as well as some things I have talked about apropos of absolutely nothing, but I talked about very recently how humans don't really know the difference between mutants and normal regular superheroes. This could very easily wind up being one of those situations where people are going to start being more hyper suspicious of just about anyone who has superpowers and could largely lead to people snitching on superheroes who aren't even mutants and putting them in Orchis's crosshairs. As in real life, there were people who snitched on folks who they thought could potentially be Muslim terrorists. Those accusations were largely unfounded and led to people either nearly getting killed or actually getting killed. We also can't forget about the recent announcement of Ms. Marvel, who is been revealed to be not just an Inhuman, but also a mutant. And while right now the public at large does not know that about Ms. Marvel, but what if someone sees Ms. Marvel out there in these streets, especially now with her new costume that she has just picked up? They're gonna see her as a mutant and they're gonna be like, oh, mutant, even though they don't actually know for a fact that she is a mutant, but they're gonna see her out there and presume that she is a mutant. This is something that can have wide-reaching implications here, and I'm not saying that's gonna happen right away. I'm not saying that at all, but with the way that Jerry Duggan has been presenting the X-Men as of late, I wouldn't be surprised if within the next year, some random superhero is going to get laid out by Orchis as a result of someone believing that a regular human mutate is a mutant. And once again, going back to that video I did about this, that was why I said the whole idea of people being angry or racist towards mutants as opposed to being perfectly okay with human mutates is a completely ridiculous idea, but it is a very good way to tell a story if handled correctly. We also can't forget about the Unity Squad that is going on right now with Captain America. Captain America is going to be seen as a mutie lover, a mutie sympathizer, and he knows exactly what he's doing here. He knows there are going to be people out there who are going to see him standing shoulder to shoulder with characters like Rogue and Penance and Psylocke, and they're just gonna be like, oh my god, this guy he's one of us, he's an ally. But Captain America is also not dumb enough to not even think about the idea that people are going to see him standing shoulder to shoulder with those same mutants that I just listed off and are going to call him a mutie lover. They're going to hate him for that. And it's not something Captain America is unaccustomed to or whatever. He's used to people not liking him for one reason or another. But I do think this is a huge opportunity for some storytelling here. And we also cannot forget, and I'm telling you, this is not by accident. We can't forget that on Orchis's hit list are characters like the Human Torch, and is even presumed that there are other non-mutant superheroes that are on Orchis's hit list. So it's not out of the spectrum of possibility that a normal superhero character is going to get caught in the crossfire and all this. So you've been warned. Now, there's some other fascist elements that Duggan is weaving into the story. We see that mutants that have been rounded up by Orchis, most of them probably having gone through those Krakoan gates that Charles Xavier had mentally forced everyone to go through during the Hellfire Gala. A lot of them have been rounded up into multiple different places. A lot of them have been placed in concentration camps, the very same types of concentration camps that we have had here in the United States that we were putting Mexican immigrants into and trying to claim that they weren't concentration camps, when in fact, that's exactly what they were. Speaking of concentration camps, we also see mass deportations where Orchis is taking mutants by the truckload and just dumping them on Arakko. And bear in mind, Orchis is keenly aware that there is a mutant civil war going on Arakko, and not only is there a mutant civil war, because as we know, if you go over to the Al Ewing X-Men Red side of things, we know that Genesis, the wife of Apocalypse, as well as Storm, are about to go to war with one another over the fate of Arakko. And one thing that is not lost on Orchis is that is going on. It's also not lost on them that Iraqi mutants, by and large, don't like Krakoan mutants, and this sentiment is only growing in the wake of that mutant civil war. Orchis knows this, and that is why they are dumping Krakoan mutants on Arakko. They are dumping them into the middle of a dumpster fire and just letting the problem sort itself out. We also see conversion therapy centers, the very same ones that we saw recently, just a few issues back in Jerry Duggan's X-Men, but we also see mutants being drugged into those conversion therapy centers because this is very likely a play on the real life conversion therapies that we see people trying to enforce upon LGBTQIA+ people in the real world. Like I said, the commentary is rampant here. And I'm here for it. I'm here for it because it's shining a light on things that people probably normally don't even think about. There's even a point in this where Dr. Stasis uses the term "not all mutants," because once again, this is a whole deal with Firestar. They're using Firestar as their face of, hey, not all mutants are bad. See, we got a good egg right here. You know, we have one of the good ones with us. You know, this is something that's really awesome that I'm really enjoying here, because I like the idea that for one, Firestar is not happy with what she's having to do, but this is a survival tactic, and Jean has placed her on this mission to pretend to be in league with Orchis. Firestar is going along with it, but I can tell you right now, internally, she is screaming her head off. This commentary is incredibly profound. I'm absolutely here for it. We're going to talk a little bit more about the state of Firestar in just a little bit, but I do also want to say she's not the only one that Orchis is trying to use as one of the good ones style person. They're also trying to get Cyclops on board as well. We learned that Cyclops, when he was thrown off the treehouse by the new mysterious Captain Krakoa, who we have yet to learn the identity of, and honestly, I don't think we'll learn the identity of this character until probably another issue of X-Men, or maybe in Uncanny Avengers when that drops. Well, I think that's going to be more likely where we figure out who we're dealing with in this regard. But whoever it is probably a big deal, because Jerry Duggan has been very, very, very tight-lipped about the true identity of this character. But they're trying to get Cyclops to be in line with Orchis just the same way that Firestar is, trying to make him one of the good ones. And I like this commentary because, well, for one, it's just like real life. You always hear about the myth of the Black Republican, you know, your Tim Scotts, your Candace Owenses, so on and so forth. Black people who consider themselves conservatives and Republicans, and conservative media loves to roll these people out whenever something like a black issue or black related issue comes up, and they always love rolling these people out so that they can toe the line, give the talking points that conservative media and conservative, you know, politicians want out there, and make it seem like, oh, no, not all black people. See, these guys right here, they're the good ones. Like I said, I'm here for it. This is real world commentary on a level that, I mean, I'm just like, man, just put it in my veins. I just mentioned Cyclops. If you're wondering why Orchis has their hands on Cyclops right now, it's actually funny. If you go back and look at the Hellfire Gala, you get the slightest hint that maybe that is in fact Dr. Stasis that is in that ambulance with Cyclops. And this is actually a callback to events that occurred in X-Men #7 when Cyclops was killed and had to take on the Captain Krakoa moniker, and Dr. Stasis was the one who had captured him, had killed him, and here we are. Dr. Stasis pretended to be a paramedic once again and picked up Cyclops, who right now, if you're wondering, his back is in fact broken. He is paralyzed from the waist down, and yeah, they got him strung up on an adamantium X, and they're trying to get Cyclops to say that mutants bad, mutants lead. Something that Cyclops isn't gonna do. Say what you will about Cyclops. I know there's a lot of Cyclops haters out there, but I'm gonna tell you right now, if there is any mutant who is ride or die for the cause of mutant freedom and rights, you will find very few who are more emphatic about that than Cyclops. Now, of all the things that Orchis has done, one of the things I found that was really incredibly interesting, just based on the scope of what they have done with the new Stark Sentinels, is that Fei Long didn't just rest on his laurels with just the one version of Stark Sentinels. We actually see at a point here that there are War Machine Sentinels as well. They're still Stark tech, but just the same way that War Machine tends to have more heavy artillery built into and onto his armor more so than Iron Man himself typically does, this is the same case with these new Stark Tech Sentinels. They're even referred to as War Machines by Fei Long, which is just very interesting. One of the big things I really want to talk about here is what's going on with Kate Pryde. Why is Kate Pryde going back to the Shadowkat moniker, a moniker she hasn't really taken in some years? I'm not the biggest historian when it comes to Shadowkat and her namesakes, but she's had quite a few of them over the years, not just going by the nickname of Kitty, but also going by the name Sprite, as well as Shadowkat, and she was even Star-Lord at one point. The idea here is that she's going back to the name Shadowkat because this is all in reference to Kate going back to her darkest days. Kate has become public enemy #1 because anyone who was on the Quiet Council is considered a high priority threat to Orchis, not just Omega level mutants, but also anyone who was on the Quiet Council. Any one of those is a high priority threat. That's why Emma Frost is a high priority threat to Orchis right now, no differently than how Iceman is a high priority threat right now. And if you're wondering what I'm talking about, we'll get over to that. I have another video coming out for the Astonishing Iceman #1 that will be out sometime shortly after this. And if you want to keep up with that, it's a pretty good idea right now that you hit that subscribe button and tap that notification bell so you make sure you don't miss out when I put out something like that. And also, you know, this particular point in the video, you're still here. Clearly you like the video, and hit that like button because, you know, helps the channel out. But no, the reason why Kate Pryde is going back to the moniker of Shadowkat is because she has just had one of the darkest moments of her entire life. No one in mutant kind can use the Krakoan gates except for Kate Pryde. She is the only mutant who is able to use the Krakoan gates, even when characters who have her exact same power set, whether it's Sync, who is syncing his X gene with Kate Pryde, he cannot use the Krakoan gates, even when he is utilizing Kate Pryde's power. Rasputin 4, the mutant from the future, a chimera who has Kate Pryde's power literally baked within her. So genetically, she is very close, almost borderline similar to Kate Pryde, if not for the fact that there are those other genes floating around in there. She is completely unable to use the Krakoan gates. So right now, Kate Pryde is the last great mutant hope. I feel like that's a lot of pressure hanging onto her shoulders. And this is coming from somebody who literally phased a bullet through the planet Earth and multiple smaller ones after that. She has literally had the weight of the world on her shoulders, and she couldn't have heavier shoulders now if she tried. Now, we don't know why she's able to use the Krakoan gates now. All we know is that whatever it is that was so different about her as a mutant that kept her from being able to use the Krakoan gates, dating back to Marauders #1, also by Jerry Duggan, we don't get an answer to what any of that is all about. I don't think that her being a mutant is in any question here. We do see earlier that she's having a conversation with a character by the name of Susan, who I don't recollect. I feel like this is a character I've seen somewhere else before, but I'm not really sure. But I'm certain somebody will probably recognize this character somewhere down the road. But if it turns out that this character is brand new, then so be it. But it's someone who Kate Pryde seems to know very well. Either way, I feel like an answer is going to be coming sooner rather than later as to why she's able to use the gates, and it's probably something that was maybe by design. The other big thing we really need to talk about regarding Kate Pryde, the reason why she's become Shadowkat, is because she is absolutely positively mentally and emotionally broken. She has watched some of her greatest friends and allies, and I would even dare say in a lot of cases, family, be murdered at the hands of Orchis, being subjugated at the hands of Orchis. And not only that, but if you go back to the Hellfire Gala issue, the very last page of that issue, which kind of acted almost as an unintentional stinger by Jerry Duggan's own words in that regard. In that final page, she is leaning against one of the Krakoan gates when Orchis switches them off, and she is able to travel through them, and she ends up falling through the gate into Jerusalem right next to a bunch of Orchis agents. And in this issue, we learn exactly what happens there. She ends up absolutely obliterating the Orchis soldiers. And I don't mean that she kicked their ass. No, she did not. She killed each and every one of them. Now, I want to make something very clear here. Kate Pryde has no idea at this point when this happens what happened to Krakoa itself. She has no idea that Krakoa has been completely surrounded by Sentinels. She has no idea whatsoever that Krakoa as we know it is absolutely done for. She slipped back into her old ways. And there's even a moment where we see that the character Ogun, who was the one responsible for training Kate Pryde to be a weapon, to be a ninja of incredible skill, utilizing her mutant power in ways that made her one of the deadliest assassins in the entire Marvel Comics universe. And while we don't see Kate Pryde utilize those skills as often as some readers would probably like, she has kind of fallen out of that phase backwards and forwards over the years. But right now, being in the situation that she's in, seeing everyone that she loves and cares about being killed or taken away, this is a huge deal for her because, for one, we have to remember Kate Pryde is Jewish. So any organization, any kind of fascist regime coming in and just willy-nilly murdering all of the people just like her and then subjugating those people into whole concentration camps is gonna strike a chord with Kate Pryde, probably even harder than it would just about anyone else. Not only that, this is a really telling moment of commentary because not only is she killing these Orchis, soldiers, she's killing them in what is effectively the holy city of Jerusalem, and she is going on an absolute murder hobo spree. And I want to be clear here, I'm not downing Kate Pryde for doing this. She is doing exactly what she should and how she should. But the idea that she's doing this in a place that by all accounts is considered holy ground, a place that is tied to her heritage, this should tell you everything you need to know right now about why Kate Pryde has gone dark in this issue, why she is cutting herself off from the rest of the X-Men. Kate Pryde is no longer the bubbly teen girl who is just on the team and is all gosh golly gee willikers, wide-eyed and big smiles like Kitty used to be. That job now falls to Kamala Khan, and that is kind of why Kamala and Kate Pryde, more Kate than Kamala, they got beef with each other because now Kate is starting to realize what she used to be like, and seeing Kamala with all that wide-eyed optimism, it pains her because, well, for one, she knows that it's only gonna last so long, and not only that, she used to be the character who used to hold people to a higher standard, to hold the old guard accountable for their terrible actions. She was the one who called Professor Xavier a jerk because he wouldn't let her be on the X-Men team. And now she's witnessing a character who has that same fire, that same charisma within herself, like Kamala Khan, and she's starting to have that mirror held up to herself and seeing what she used to be and now looking more at what she's become. And she sees herself as a failure because she's not holding up her end of the deal the way she tried to hold the old guard accountable in her day. She is not holding up her end to the younger characters that are coming up now, even if they're not saying it to her, even if they don't actually feel that way. But that is how Kate Pryde views herself. Now, Kate Pryde's new mission that she has taken upon herself is to kill Firestar, because as I said earlier, Firestar is considered a traitor among mutants now because she is working with Orchis, not because she wants to, but because Jean had convinced Firestar to go through with the plan of infiltrating Orchis, pretending to be a defector and working alongside them, but no one else knows the truth about it. And Kate has made it her mission, now that she's Shadowkat again, to murder Firestar and make an example out of her. And honestly, without having all of the info, it would be difficult to judge Kate for wanting to do this. But I don't know how long Jerry Duggan is gonna pull at this thread, because it's technically something he's already been setting up for a year when Firestar was put on the X-Men from last year's Hellfire Gala. So I don't know how long he's gonna let this drag out, the idea that no one else knows that Firestar is a mole inside of Orchis. But if Kate gets her hands on Firestar, it's gonna be over, because you cannot burn what cannot be touched. It doesn't even matter if Firestar burns out all the oxygen in a room or not. It wouldn't be that big of a deal to Kate because she holds her breath when she uses her powers anyway. So that's another story altogether, but it's bad news for Firestar. There's lots of other stuff going on in this comic, and I know at this point this video is probably over 30 minutes long. It actually is almost 40 minutes long as I'm looking down at the recording timer, but I'm hoping to God it's not going to be that long. But the only thing I will definitely say is that, well, yes, we do get the knowledge that Kamala Khan's parents, her family, their minds have been wiped. That is something we kind of expected to happen with the character, because from the solicits we saw for Miss Marvel, the New Mutant #1, we see that her family is so happy to see her, but we know from those solicits that Emma Frost had wiped their memory, so they have no idea that Kamala ever died in the first place. And they also have no recollection that Miss Marvel had died in the first place. And this is technically of note because in the comics, and I don't know what is really happening here with Kamala as far as her publication right now, because there was a specific point where Kamala's mother actually knew that Kamala was Miss Marvel. The rest of her family did not, but during the Fallen Friend Death of Miss Marvel comic, it was implied her parents had no idea. So I don't really know where that's gonna go, if it's gonna go anywhere, but I'm pretty sure that the idea that they don't know what's going on is just gonna lead to more heartbreak down the road, because they're gonna find out eventually. And while I don't want to just believe that her parents are gonna hate her or try and do anything bad to her for finding out that she's a mutant now as well as an Inhuman and a whole superhero, I want to believe that this setup is just misdirection to get us to think something bad will happen when ultimately nothing bad will happen at all. But you never know. This is the fall of X, and right now Kamala Khan has joined the X-Men, kind of just like Kate Pryde did back in the day, and all I can see in my head is the cover of Uncanny X-Men number 139 with Kitty on the cover, and only this time it's gonna say, "Welcome to the X-Men, Kamala Khan. Hope you survive the experience." The other thing of note that happens in this issue is that we also see the release of the Children of the Vault because of what Orchis has done in regards to shutting down Krakoa. That means that Project Black Box, that whole deal that Forge has set up at the behest of Charles Xavier and was using it to keep the Children of the Vault in check, well, none of that is on the board anymore. The Children of the Vault are free. This is how we're gonna wind up getting that Children of the Vault 5-part series. I believe this is coming out very shortly, so there's that. And we also have the induction, technically a very loose induction of the new character Woofer, who was introduced just a couple of issues ago in Jerry Duggan's X-Men. So welcome to the X-Men, Woofer. Hope you survive the experience too. This issue is spinning a lot of plates, and as it should. It's a big 25th issue. It's a landmark issue for the X-Men, and it is a solid issue of the X-Men, and I think honestly just puts further context on everything that happened during the Hellfire Gala. So I am here for it. I'm absolutely pleased with what Jerry Duggan is doing. And once again, I know a lot of people, I think when I was talking to Carter on the Blerd Cave about it, he was like, "Oh nope, I'm done with X-Men comics." Not me. I am in for a penny, in for a pound, because I don't want to live in a world where the heroes always win. I think that's a very unfun way to look at comics or to experience media in general. I've said this before and I will say it again. The X-Men cannot always win. They have been winning for the last 3, almost 4 years. It was about time they finally took an L, and if you win for that long, the L you take must be a massive one, and that's exactly what this is. And even though they've lost, we know they're gonna win in the end because the good guys always do. And if you're angry about what's happened to the X-Men, look at it this way. You care. It upsets you. You felt something. It might not have been the feeling you wanted to feel, but that's a good thing, because if you were happy that the X-Men got shit on, that would make you just a weird person to me. So in the words of Edward Fitzgerald, this too shall pass. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, do the YouTube thing. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and make sure you tap that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of the videos that I put out. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, and until next time, let me know what you thought about X-Men number 25. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.